Hey, what's up guys? Anshul here from Alpha Code. So we are continuing with implementing domain-driven design. And the first part, we saw what event storming is. And in this part, we'll see how we can implement domain-driven design in code. So let's take an analogy of a trade fair. So suppose this is your trade fair and these are all the stalls that you have in your trade fair. Suppose the yellow ones are for doctors and the red ones are for mechanical engineers. Blue ones are for software engineers because we really like trade fairs, and green ones are for suppose lawyers. So people can enter from either this gate, and these trade fair stalls are really strict. So only software engineers can enter this area and only doctors can enter this area. Now, suppose we only check entry ticket at main gates, whether they are allowed to enter or not. And we do the profession checking in every room while the person is about to enter that particular stall. And how do we verify whether the person is doctor or engineer? Suppose you have guidelines for every profession that what you need to check before getting in, right? So what is the problem with this approach? Well, this approach is very inefficient if you ask me, because if a person has already entered, suppose this room F11, and they verified that this person was a software engineer, whenever he will try to go to this room to F12, they will do the same checks again, and in F14 they'll do the same checks again. Secondly, it's insecure. So suppose all of the security guards are very honest, but the security guard in room F27 is sort of lazy, and what he did is that he only checked the first point and he forgot to check the second and third point maybe. So a clever person got in and he saw what he wasn't supposed to see, right? And then this process is very complex as well. In fact, it's a very messy process. The person who came in will also get frustrated because you have checks everywhere. People are standing in line. This sort of slows things down. What else? It is very hard to maintain because anytime you want to change the number of steps that is required to verify a profession, you'll really have a hard time because you'll have to update all of them. So what can we do about this? Well, a very easy solution would be to do profession checking at the gate. Just do those 3 checks here, and then color code the bands on a person's hand that you have, something that you have in clubs and parties these days. And then whenever that person comes in and tries to enter room 10, after seeing the band of blue color in his hand, they will let him in because they know this person has been verified. So what does this has to do anything with domain-driven design? Well, this directly implies that whenever you are letting something in your domain, so trade fair is your domain right now, just do the check at the start, tag that person somehow, and then he can roam around freely and everyone will be satisfied that he is who he says he is. All the people you were letting in were actually a person. Person is a very broad category as compared to a software engineer or a doctor or a mechanical engineer maybe. Similarly, when you use an int for a room number, int is a very broad category as compared to a room number. Or if you use float for ratings, those are very broad categories. So as soon as those broad categories enter your domain, you need to restrict them. Now, how can you do that? So suppose you have these 2 classes. I see most of the code out there is written like this. So this is known as stringly typed code. Almost everything is string. So your email is string, your name is string, your mobile number is string, and in your products you have your ratings that are int, and how much quantity you have of the product is also an int. And then you have title, description, which are strings, and price is a big decimal because float and double doesn't make sense at all. So these are very broad categories. In domain-driven designs context, strings and ints and big decimals, all of these are primitives. I know most of the people call ints, double floats as primitives, but all of these are domain primitives. What is the domain here? Domain is Java, because Java is providing this out of the box. String is a primitive for Java's domain, and big decimal is primitive for Java's domain, and int is primitive for almost any domain. So you need to build upon these primitives and create your own primitives that you will like to use. So how can you do that? Create a primitive called name, and whenever name is required, just use that class. Create a value object called phone number, create a value object called email. And it's not like this is just a wrapper around string. This will have all sorts of behavior as well. And phone number will have maximum number of digits allowed. That is also a variable. Otherwise, if you do checks here, either you'll have to use that max number of digits inside your user class, which doesn't make sense, and that should go to phone number because it will have all sorts of checks. Similarly, in product, you'll have ratings. So suppose tomorrow, if you want to have ratings, like you want to save how many people gave how much rating, can also be saved inside this. So you are bringing the complexity out, and design is more extendable. Similarly, if you want to decrease quantity, you will just write a method and you can make it thread safe. And you might want to have restriction on the characters that you can have in the title and the number of characters that you can have in the title, and that will bring all sorts of constants with it. So all of them should go to title so that you don't have any magic numbers inside your code. Similarly, you will have some limitations on description, and especially money. Never ever use big decimal directly as money in your code. I recently saw a code base which has big decimal keyword in their code base 668 times. Can you believe that? Because if any one of you has coded with big decimal before, you will see that it is immutable. You have to create it again and again. And because it doesn't give you the functionality that you need, you have to create it even more. And most of the value objects that you have here should be immutable. I understand Java people might say that it's hard to create a class and you'll have to write a lot of code for this. But as we go on into our next crash course, I'll show you some neat ways how you can create all of this with using very less amount of code. Right, so I'm going to show you a code snippet right now, and you need to pause the video and understand what that code is doing. Here it is.